Hi, I'm Kevin Murphy, and you're listening to the Head Smack Podcast.
You are listening to conversations with misfits, mavericks, and trailblazers.
Hey, welcome to the Head Smack Podcast. My name is Paul Pavolny, and I'm excited to have another misfit with me. I have Kevin Murphy, and he is from the Bronx, and he went from the Bronx to an internationally recognized artist and educator and founder of the Art Academy Schools and Evolve Artist Online Education. Kevin, how you doing, man?
I'm doing very well, Paul. Thank you for having me.
Hey, thanks for coming on. Looking forward to this conversation. I love talking to artists. I love talking to creatives. And so I think it's going to be a fun conversation. So usually the way I like to start this, I'm very much into superheroes, as you can see from behind me.
Sure.
And so very different background to yours with a beautiful painting in the background. Mine's like all teenage basement vibe. But I do like to hear origin stories. I like to kind of hear where people come from because it helps us understand a little better of where they're at now. So tell me a little bit about your origin story, and you can go as far back as you feel would be relevant.
Oh, sure. Well, I try not to drag it on for too long. It was an interesting path. I grew up in the Bronx, in a pretty bad neighborhood, and my parents insisted. I have three brothers, and they insisted that we be very busy, so that we stayed out of trouble. And I wasn't interested in a lot of the sports that we had at the time, things like baseball. I didn't have interest in them. And so my parents got me into taking art classes. And I did that when I was young, maybe around 10 years old. I did it for a little while. And the person who ran the class recommended to my parents, told my parents I had a talent, which I've grown to not believe in, but told my parents I had a talent and that my parents should encourage me to pursue art. And my parents didn't believe in doing things like that. They just let us, we had to be active, but we could choose what we wanted to do. And as long as we were doing things and staying out of trouble, they didn't force us to do anything. And so for me, I dabbled in art for a little while and then it kind of fell off. And I barely graduated high school. I graduated, I had a 68 average, 65 being passing. And I'm not a stupid person. I was just bored and I just didn't like the format. And so I graduated and I got into construction. I worked construction for 3.5 years in the city, working in skyscrapers. And I enjoyed the work. You have to understand, I grew up very poor. Within 2 years of starting construction, I was earning more money than my parents. And
Wow.
so my parents were very happy. Union job in the city, not a bad thing, you know? And so, but yeah, I grew up, my family, we lived below the poverty line my entire time growing up. And I look back at it now, I've made more money in one day than my parents made in a year on doing art.
Wow.
It's a crazy thing to consider that. My parents, they didn't go to college, either of them. My father drove a taxi and my mother worked as an aide in a local elementary school. And so, it was important to them to be around for me and my brothers. And, the plan worked out. I mean, we didn't have much. And, when you're a kid and you don't have anything, you don't really know. You don't understand that you're poor.
Right.
At some point around maybe 7th grade, I figured that out when I realized that I grew up in the Bronx. There's no rich people there. But when I realized that we had less than almost everybody else, it started to sink in. But, my parents I have three brothers. One is a PhD in computer science. He runs the department for a university. And I have two brothers with master's degrees, and I have a high school diploma. I'm the dumb one in the family. But my parents encouraged us to do what we loved, be exceptional at it, and then find a way to monetize it. They would say to us all the time, if you're happy doing sanitation work, just be good at it.
Yeah.
And you'll be fine. And so each of my brothers, we all followed whatever was of interest to us. I have a brother who's 1 year younger than me. He has a master's degree in business, and after September 11th, he joined the military. He just believed that he didn't have any prospects for a wife or kids, and he decided that somebody had to go do this work.
Wow.
And he thought that, a lot of the people that are in the military, they're not good representatives of, the best of us. And it's not that they're bad people. They're sacrificing in big ways, but he was educated. And he thought he'd do 5 years as a grunt, and then he'd do officer's training. And in his 5th year, he was injured, and he shattered 3 vertebrae in his back, and he wound up driving a desk for the next 10 years until they finally put him out on disability. but it's like, my parents raised us to kind of follow our dreams, to work very, very hard, and to and then find a way to make a living at the thing we enjoyed. And
Well, usually
so,
with somebody coming from that place is they don't see the arts as a legitimate pursuit. Like, how are you going to make money drawing pictures? And so
yeah.
were they of that mindset, or were they even
Oh,
encouraging in that?
well, I went to work one day. I was working down in Battery Park in the city, and I got out of the train at the World Trade Center, and I was walking across it's like 5:30 in the morning, bitter cold. It was like, I don't know, it was like 12 degrees. It was so cold. And I got to the building, and I was just, I liked the work. I liked the physical labor, but the early mornings and the brutal cold, I could do without them. And of course, anybody who's worked in construction understands, like, a 45-year-old man is broken. Like, by then, every guy coming into work at 45, the guys look old, and they're all popping pills for bad knees and bad backs and arthritis. And I just, like, I decided I didn't want to take that path.
Yeah.
And I knew that I could do something else, but I really didn't know what. And so I kept working. Then one day it was just bitter, bitter cold. And I just thought, I don't want to do this anymore. Like,
Yeah.
you go up to your locker and you grab your jeans, your work jeans, and they have, the sweat from the day before has frozen, and your clothes you're putting on are crunching because everything's
Wow.
frozen. It's like, why would you want to do this? Like, if you don't have to. And like I
Yeah.
said, I like the work. But I decided I wasn't going to do it anymore. And so I gave all of my tools away to one of the apprentices, and I left.
Wow.
I went up
There's
to
no
the
coming
locker,
back.
took all my, yeah, I burned the ships.
Yeah.
Um, I knew that if I held on to my tools, there would be a plan B in place. And so I decided I was done. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew it wasn't that.
Right.
I did not want to wake up and go out in that cold at 5:30 in the morning in the dark ever again. And so that was it. And I went and I stopped and I got breakfast at a local diner downtown. And I thought about it, and I decided I wanted to do science fiction book covers. And that kind of came around because I
Wow.
graduated high school. I was borderline illiterate. I could barely read. And I'm not a lazy person. Um, like, I tell people all the time, like, I cannot be outworked. I work very, very hard, but I have to be interested in the thing I'm doing.
Right.
I
Right.
don't do everything, but what I do at 100%. I do very
Yeah.
well. I'm not afraid of work. And so was borderline illiterate, but I was getting on the trains, and there was no tech back then. So you sit there and at 5:30 in the morning looking at all the sleeping homeless people, and that's all
Yeah.
it was.
Yeah.
And so I could barely read. In a regular mass market book, I could read about 6 pages an hour, 10 minutes to read a page. Like, it's
Wow. Wow.
insane. And so I asked a few friends of mine who are avid readers like, if they could recommend books that even at the speed that I read, they'd keep my attention. And they recommended some books to me, and I read them, and they were great. It was rough getting through them, but the stories were great, and it's all science fiction stuff. And so I started reading books every day on my way to work. And then I took a speed reading course, which helped significantly. It wasn't a good one. And once I saw what that did, I gave it a little bit of time, and then I took a really good speed reading course. And I went from reading about 6 pages an hour to reading about 170 pages an hour. And
Wow.
in the three and a
Wow.
half years I did construction, I consumed about 1,000 books, and on every topic you could possibly think of. And a lot of people think speed reading is skimming. It's not. You read every word. There's a system for it.
Yeah.
And so, but yeah, I read about 1,000 titles in that window of time. History books, and I mean, I just, the more you read, the more you realize you don't know, the more things you become curious about. And it's just like, for me, I wanted to know. And so by the time I had gotten out of construction, I'd read about 1,000 books. I'd say maybe about 600 of them within the science fiction and fantasy genre. And I'd fallen in love with the artwork. And so I decided I was going to become an illustrator. I wanted to do book covers for that stuff. And I had no idea what the odds were, because they were much
Yeah.
closer to zero than to 1%.
Yeah.
And had I known the odds, I might not have taken the leap. But something to be said for ignorance.
Right. Right.
And so, so I just set out on a path. I went to the School of Visual Arts for one semester. I was paying for it out of my own pocket, and I realized it was a total waste of time. And it was ranked number one in the country, maybe in the world at the time, for illustration. But I realized I wasn't going to get the education that I wanted there. So I went on my own. I painted for a while, maybe about 8 months. And then I just couldn't seem to improve the work. I reached out to a very famous artist and asked him if I could come watch him work. And he was like, yeah.
Wow.
And so I went out to his house. He's only a year older than me. I went out to his house. This is actually his painting behind me. His name is
Nice. It's
Dorian
beautiful.
Vallejo. Incredible, incredible painter.
Yeah.
Um, but but I went out. He let me work at his studio one day, walked me through some things, and then I went out on my own. And within a year, I was a working pro. I went from knowing nothing to my first job was for a major publishing company doing a book cover.
Wow.
And by the
Now, how are you
time
supporting yourself during that time?
I had saved a lot of money when I worked construction.
Ah, okay.
My only real expense was getting back and forth from work. I wasn't squandering what I had. My parents had raised me to be thoughtful about money. We had so little, I didn't
Yeah.
squander it. And so I had enough money to cover my college and to float myself for a couple of years. The only expense I really had was my youngest brother. He, much like me, when he was in high school, he wrestled. And so because of that, he couldn't have a job. He was too busy wrestling. And so I basically covered all of his bills for him so that he could have a decent experience while he was in high school. And so, but other than that, everything else I had really went into savings. And
Yeah.
so when I started painting on my own, I had money. I could afford to buy equipment and buy brushes and paint. But I like I said, within a year, I went from nothing to being a working professional. And it was pure tenacity. I just worked. I worked
Yeah.
15, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week. I wasn't going out. I wasn't partying. I wasn't hanging out with my friends. I was just working. I was on a mission.
Yeah.
And um and so I landed my first book cover. And as that book finished, Sega Genesis, the video game company, reached out to me about something. I did a project for them. And within about 3 or 4 months, I started to line up a queue of jobs.
Yeah.
And I did that for the next 8 years.
Wow.
I was booked at one point, I was booked almost 2 years out. And I had maybe about 6.5 years in, I decided I want to get away from book covers a little bit because though they were a lot of fun, and that's why I got into the industry, they don't pay that much. And so
Mm.
like it's enough to make a living, but you're not building a nest egg for yourself
Right.
through that
Right.
industry. And so I started getting into more mainstream illustration, and I did work with LucasArts, packaging for like toys and stuff like that for Jurassic Park, Star Wars. And eventually I did work for National Geographic and RJ Reynolds, Camel Cigarettes, when they lost that multi-billion-dollar lawsuit because they had Joe Camel and they were selling cigarettes to children through cartoons, and they had to do a more adult marketing campaign. I was involved in that new campaign, and eventually I did a cover for the Rolling Stones. I did the Bridges to
Wow.
Babylon CD cover, and that was just at that point I could have really kind of picked and chosen what I wanted to do, and those are all
Yeah.
really really good paying jobs. They pay outlandish amounts. RJ Reynolds obviously has a budget.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
They were like, I think they were like $20,000 for a weekend. Like you would
Wow.
get the job on Friday and it had to be delivered Monday, so you didn't sleep, and but that you were very well paid for it.
Yeah.
And that was good for a little while. And again, obviously, at some point, you look at the money and you're like, I'm selling cigarettes. I don't want to do this. And so I kind of backed away from jobs like that. But I got the Rolling Stones cover. I did that. It was a huge, huge thing. They hung an 80-foot banner of my painting off the Brooklyn Bridge when they
Oh,
announced the
wow.
tour here in the U.S. Yeah, the size of an 8-story building. It was
Did you
crazy.
take your whole family to drive by it and check it
You
out?
know, it's funny. I was in court fighting a speeding ticket.
Oh, man. Oh,
Yeah,
man.
so I missed it. I missed it. Yeah,
So
crazy.
So, for artists that might be listening to this, how did your style evolve? Did it evolve, and how did it evolve? And did you find your own particular style or niche that you loved more than others?
Well, because of what I was doing, I mean, I was working in realism, right? And
Yeah,
even though I was painting fantasy, I was painting dragons and explosions and spaceships. It's still painted in a realistic style, a believable style. And so the look of my work, and I make this, I tell people all the time that ask me about style, it happens naturally. You don't decide
yeah,
what you want as a style and then fight to create it. What you have is natural. You have an internal voice. You see the world a certain way, and your creativity, you're born with it. Like children are not born to be, they're not taught to be creative. They're born that way. and we kind of crush that under, that thing doesn't make sense. If you're going to draw a face, it has to look like this. And it's like, eventually, once you learn how to produce art, your natural voice will resurface. It takes time because you have to be
Yeah.
confident in the fact and in your skills. You have to know that you can produce what you can envision. And, you start by producing what you can see. If you can't draw, a ball and a cube sitting on a table with precision and match the colors that you see, how are you supposed to pull something that's in your mind, in your imagination, and bring it to life on a canvas? And it starts by slowly building these very, very, almost like just one, like you think about each success is a sheet of paper, and you need stacks and stacks of like irrefutable proof that you can deliver, not for
Yeah.
other people, but for yourself, to then start to get bold about what you do, to start stretching the boundaries. I could do better. Like you look at a photograph and you'll say, like, I do a lot of portrait work, and I'll have photographs. I'll photograph the subject, but the painting is so much nicer than the photographs because I'm not limited by the reality. I
Yeah.
can take
Yeah.
something and say, I know how to make this look even nicer. I can make something much more three-dimensional with paint than the photograph will give me because I understand how it works. And so
Wow.
I'm not limited in my creativity. The reference material, whether it's a photograph or something from direct observation or even something from my imagination, is just a point of departure. And then it's a matter of how well can I manage the materials to bring that thing to life. So
Right.
style emerges. We're born with it. And I think every single person, their imagination is a little bit different. You can cultivate imagination. It's like anything else. If you immerse yourself in something, you see all of the things being done and all this. Like, let's say you want to do you want to do some interior design in your own home, but you're not an interior designer. You don't just go into a store and start looking at what's available, right? Not if you're smart. You get a whole bunch of magazines, you go online and you see what professional interior designers do. And you look at the stuff and you're like, well, that's really cool. I would love to live in that room. Let's make some notes. And you do enough of that, you immerse yourself in it. Eventually, you may take ideas from 100 people, but the final design is your own take on what they've done, like
Yeah.
all of them
Yeah.
mixed together. And those ideas, even though they start from someone else's ideas, they are eventually wholly yours.
Yeah.
That's really your own creativity taking over and saying, I liked what that person did, but I think that black should have been a dark gray. I would have liked that more. Well, that's your personal feelings, your personal
Right.
flavor that you add. And so with art, it's the same thing. Just at some point, what inspires you, what you find beautiful, will eventually take hold and push out um, the standards of the training that you were given. So if you learn how to paint realism, you could stretch out into just about anything from there, and you're just leaning on those technical skills.
Right. So with your work, what do you feel might have stood out or gotten the attention of the Rolling Stones?
Well, it's funny. It wasn't the quality of my work that got that lined up. So it's a funny story. I did a project through a very famous packager. His name is Stefan Sagmeister.
Yeah. Oh,
Huge,
yeah.
huge name.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't know who he was, and I did a project with him for Viacom and MTV. Viacom had just purchased MTV, and you had like the 58-year-old guys at Viacom and the 22-year-old guys at MTV, and they decided that they were going to launch a video game branch out of the company, and they hadn't figured out exactly what the structure was going to be yet, and so they had representatives from both companies involved in this. And so it was the first video game, and Sagmeister brought it in, and I wound up with the job. And the project came back to us like 23 times for rework. And
Wow.
what it was the 21-year-olds liked one thing and they approved it, and then the 58-year-olds didn't like it and they send it back. And it came back and forth and back and forth and back. Every 3 days it showed up at my house.
Wow.
And I never complained. It's just that's the business. I got paid every time it came back, but still, like, it'll screw up your schedule,
Right.
So for me, I
Right.
was pretty quick and I was able to do the corrections pretty quickly and put it back out the door. Anyway, we were about maybe about 2 months out of this thing keep coming back like this. And I finally reached out to Sagmeister and I was like, "Hey, like, I need a little bit more than like a 1-day turnaround on these. I'm starting to mess up my schedule here. I need like a week if they're going to keep sending it back. And he said to me, like, I was wondering when you were going to say something. He's like, as long as you didn't say anything, I was just going to let it keep going. But he's like,
Yeah.
I'm going to tell them we're taking one last round and that'll be it. So about a month later, the Aerosmith's 9 Live CD wound up in Sagmeister's studio, and he reached out to me about it. And I was supposed to do 9 paintings for it. But it took them a really long time to settle on the project. And by the time it had finally like been given the green light, there wasn't enough time for somebody to do like me to do 9 paintings. So what happened is they brought in 3 watercolor guys and split the paintings up and had it done like that. And right as that thing hit, the Rolling Stones piece came in. And Sagmeister knew this was going to be a tough job. It was going to be exhausting. For you can imagine the Rolling Stones, like 40 years of being told
Yeah.
yes to everything, right?
Right.
Nobody
Right.
tells them no.
Right.
And so he reached out to me and it was like, I'd like to have you on this project because like, I know that you're not going to be another problem. Like whatever problems come, you're just going to get the work done. So that's actually how I wound up on that project. Now, I don't know, had that Viacom project not gone the way that it had, I might have still gotten called for the job. I don't know. But I know that he said to me, like, that was a huge factor that I was just easy to work with. I didn't complain when I should have been complaining. And he figured
Yeah.
there's going to be a lot to complain about with the Rolling Stones. So
Right.
it was just the nature of dealing with big corporations. People get out of their way. They need
Yeah.
something, they get it because nobody wants to turn that project away. And so yeah, and I didn't think it was that stressful. I mean, he was dealing with them all the time. I just got the trickle down from him.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, I mean, there were a couple of things. There were a couple of things that were challenging. But it was a great project. I mean, how many people get to say they've done a cover for the Rolling Stones?
Right. Right.
That's pretty cool.
It
And
is pretty awesome. So, how
yeah,
do you approach a project like that creatively?
yeah,
It is the Rolling Stones, right? It
yeah,
is. It does come with a legacy of
mhm,
creativity and
yeah,
just world class
mhm.
acts. How do you approach a project like that, and how do you come up with solutions for it?
Yeah, it's funny. So when Sagmeister called me about the project, it was around 9 o'clock in the morning. I had just gotten up, and I had just started a publishing company with 2 friends, and we were going to our first convention, a big convention down in Atlanta, that next weekend. And so when Sagmeister called me about the Rolling Stones cover, I told him I couldn't take it. I turned it down. Yeah, that's the
What?
look. I said, "Hey, you know what? I would love
Wow.
to do this with you." I wasn't really a fan of the Rolling Stones. I mean, I listened to some of their music, but I wasn't a fan.
Yeah.
And it was just like, I have other obligations and I really couldn't put the time and energy into this. Um, so I'm gonna pass on it. And I went about my business. I cooked some breakfast for myself. I walked the dog. I came back up. I sat down and I thought, you're an idiot. I pick up the phone and I call him back and I'm like, "Hey, I know that project's already gone, but I figured I'd give you a call just in case." He goes, "No, I was going to give you a call back in about an hour and see if you'd come to your senses."
The reality check of
Yeah, well,
yeah.
just and the thing is I wound up painting it. I wound up painting it at this convention down in Atlanta. Like 70,000 people there and I'm sitting at a table working on a Rolling Stones cover. Now, mind you, I
Wow.
hadn't had the contract in hand yet. I didn't see the contract. I got the project and left town. In the contract, it's like, you can't have anything public, you can't discuss it, it's like, "Oops," you know?
I just did it in front of
So,
70,000 people, yeah.
yeah. Now, and so but I wound up doing the painting. We had 9 days to do it, and I did it half of it
Wow.
at a massive convention down in Georgia. It was pretty at Dragon Con. Massive
Yeah.
convention.
Did those people know what you were painting? Oh, they you told them?
Yeah, well, yeah, people like, well, I was a pretty well-known artist in that industry at the time. I was
Yeah.
very well known. Um, and so I wouldn't say I was one of the top artists in the business, but everybody knew who I was. And so, I mean, I was doing about 20 book covers a year. So you walk into a bookstore, you could find 40 or 50 paintings of mine on the shelves at any time, like a Barnes and Noble. And so, yeah, everybody knew who I was, and the fact that I was doing a painting. Very few of these artists they don't paint at these conventions, and so I was actually working on a project. People coming over in droves. What are you working on? Oh, this is the new Rolling Stones cover. Go figure. I guess. Oh my God, I would have been in my room painting had I seen the contract, but I hadn't
Yeah.
seen it yet, and so everything was such a rush. Right. I got the call the next day. I had the project in hand and it was due 9 days later. It was a real rush. So I didn't even have a chance to sign the contract. My agent signed it for me. But I hadn't seen it. I didn't even think about it. Like, so, but anyway, I mean, it's nothing to do about that. And it was back
Yeah.
in 87.
Yeah.
But, yeah, but anyway, so in the end, the painting wound up being a very different painting. It originally started out with this like really complex background. But then the way that they did the packaging, they decided to go with something very simple, and they put it. We had to switch the painting over to a desert scene in the background. But originally, it was this beautiful, like stained. It looked like a stained photograph, a junkyard of the ages with classic cars and marble columns, and that went on just forever. But it was too complex. So the painting that I did at the convention was not the wound up not being the painting that was on the cover.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah,
So
so
probably a lot of the people at the convention were like, "He lied to us. He said he was doing a
well,
Rolling Stone
the
cover."
the lion so the lion, which is iconic in the image, that's the
Yeah.
same, but
Oh,
everything
okay.
else was changed. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
So
so
where did the concept come from? Like, was that something that you were responsible for? Was
no,
that
no, like,
okay?
projects like this stuff is all dictated from upstream. So Stefan Sagmeister worked on it. He put together an entire package. He designed everything. Now, the artwork wasn't specific, this is what you're gonna paint, but it was like, this is what we're looking for, and then I had to do some sketches for him. He picked the one he liked out of mine, dropped it into the final package that was approved,
So
and
how
so
does that inspiration work for you? Did you listen to music? Did you like how does as you started developing what you needed to develop and the vibe and the feel, how does that work for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I spent a little bit of time. A couple of my friends are huge Rolling Stones fans, so I spent a little bit of time kind of hanging out and listening to music and just kind of get into the flow of things. And like I said, it's not like, I mean, it's impossible to not know who they are. Like
Yeah.
at my age, of course. I mean, but but just spending some time. I watched some of their concerts, like clips of some of their concerts to see different things. And again, there's no internet back then. I was like, my friends had like VHS tapes, and so I just watching stuff to see like set designs because I knew all of this stuff was being built, and the stuff that I was working on had potential to be integrated into what they were doing. And
Right,
so I
right.
just wanted to have some sense of it. I understood that the lion was meant to be iconic, and it had started out. It was an Assyrian lion. It had a conical helm and a braided beard, and it had wings. And eventually, as the editors went to work on it, it lost everything except for the braided beard. And which is because as an icon, just as an outline, it wasn't recognizable for what it was, and they decided the shape of the lion they would be recognized as an icon, and so that's what we got. These projects, like, you don't really have a say.
Right,
Your opinions don't matter. Like, they will tell you what they like, and it doesn't matter if it makes sense. But they're the client; they know what they want for whatever the reasons they want them, and it's like, okay, well, I'm being paid to apply my skills on your ideas, right? That's it. I'll you know, you offer whatever insights you have when you're asked. That's all.
right, right.
And you
Yeah,
just and I think like that's a lot of things. And it's so easy to have an opinion and be like, your opinion's not welcome here, but you don't think like that. I know a lot of artists that would have voiced their opinions and probably been pushed off the job,
right,
and it's like, for some projects you're a hired mercenary. You have a skill, they need it, they pay you for it. They don't need the other parts of you, right? When I did book covers, I designed every cover from the ground up. I read the whole book, put together multiple sketches. The art directors said they like this one or that one, and then I would go from there. Like, it was almost entirely on me. But projects like the Star Wars stuff, like once you start getting into those bigger things, you just like you have no say. Like the RJ Reynolds stuff, they like I would show up on a Friday afternoon, they would be doing photo shoots. They'd run the prints right there, hand them to me, and I just copied them. And I had
wow.
to deliver a finished painting that looked like the photograph Monday morning. That was
Oh
it.
my
That
goodness.
was the job.
Wow.
All I was a painter. I was not allowed to have any opinions, just
Yeah.
paint. And so, and I said, you get paid a lot more, but you have no, it's not a creative outlet. And for me, I eventually got tired of that. Like after the Rolling Stones piece, I basically cleared my queue of everything I could, finished up what jobs were like the second or third book in a set, and stepped away from that. I took 2 years off. I had
Wow.
lost my interest in it because I'd gotten into it because I love the science fiction and fantasy stuff, but I wasn't making enough money in it. Um, and so I decided that I moved into this stuff where I'd be paid a lot more, but I didn't really enjoy it. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
eventually I just got tired of all of it. And so I stepped away. I didn't pick up a paintbrush for 2 years. And
Wow.
then I'm sure I was burned out. Like I was working like 15, 16-hour days. And
Yeah.
I'd take one day off in between projects and then jump on the next project. And so I took
I
two
think
years
for
off.
a lot of young designers and artists, I think they sometimes have a hard time um, taking their personal feelings out of certain projects when they need to. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what you were sharing is, I know as a younger designer for me, like everything for me was personal. Like here's my baby, that I've
Yeah.
created, love my baby. And then when somebody
Yeah.
would come back with their opinion or with
Mhm.
strategy or whatever, I'd get offended because it's like, you don't understand how beautiful this thing is that I
Yeah.
just created for
Yeah.
you. How
Yeah.
dare you criticize it?
Yeah. They're telling you
But
your child, your baby has a face only its mother could love. Yeah.
right,
And
right.
it's personal. How could you not take that personally? You know?
Right, right. But I think that also comes with maturity is understanding when your personal subjective solution is needed and valuable and necessary, and when strategy leads and how you feel about it doesn't matter, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And part of it is just understanding people, right? As an artist, I can have an ego about being a creative voice. But the person who's paying me can have an ego about the fact that they are paying me to get what they want. I don't want to
Right,
bang heads with somebody like that. They don't need me the way that I need them, right? There are other artists.
right.
And for me, it was business. Like I viewed it as a business. These were all business dealings. And so I tried very carefully. Where I could inject myself into it, I did because I like the creative aspect of it. But I
Yeah,
also recognized that there were projects and the people that I was dealing with where they didn't want my opinions didn't matter. I didn't have a $25 million marketing team behind me telling me what the market wants.
right,
And so
right.
how could I possibly know? My opinion, my aesthetic? What do I know? And so I understood that. I understood that it not early on. I figured it out along the way. There were times
Right.
I overstepped because I didn't know any better. I didn't
Yeah,
know any better. I didn't have anybody to guide me. And I
yeah.
have a very hard head and I have a lot of faith in myself. And so, yeah, I mean, I've overstepped a few times in my career and I learned hard lessons from it.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
yeah.
think for a young artist or a young designer, the sooner they can learn that, the better it is for their career. Is understanding, when that push is necessary, when they need to fight for the creative, and other times when they just need to do what needs to be done. And
Yeah.
I know when I led a team, when I worked in an agency and led a team of creatives, I would have to let them know when something was a directive and when something was a discussion,
Mhm.
because what would happen is we'd present concepts of whether they're marketing concepts or logos or designs, and we'd put them on a wall and I would share my feedback on it. And sometimes they would take that as a directive and say, do exactly what Paul just said.
Right.
And it was like, no, 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 that was just a discussion. Like, you take this and you make it your own and you kind of do your own thing. And I think for young designers and artists, understanding how to work in those circumstances when something is a discussion and when something is a directive, I
Yeah.
think really makes a big difference with them succeeding in the area that they're at.
Well, I think one of the problems that artists run into is along the pathway you're getting your education, you're dealing with other artists. They're the ones teaching you. And artists, sadly, are notoriously bad at business. They're because they don't think of what they do as business.
Yeah,
They think of it as creative, and it's like it's creative in your studio, but when you're interacting with the people who are hiring you, it's business. You have to
right.
understand, like You're not always going to be creative. You get to be creative. And look, this, you have different circumstances. One way you get to be as creative as you want, and the art directors just let you run because they're hiring you for what you do, and you're going to be the best at determining what you do. If they
Right.
love what they see, the best thing for them to do is to stay out of your way and just let you do it. They
Right.
get the cleanest version of you that way. Then you have art directors who they ask you to be creative, but then they will kind of reel you in based on the audience they know they have. But you have quite a bit of flexibility there, and those are conversations. They're not one direction. Those are conversations. You do a thing, they're like, well, could we get rid of this figure? It's a little bit crowded for what we're going to be doing. And you're like, well, that figure's really important. It's like, well, could we reduce the figure? And okay, good. We can now work with this. It's a conversation.
Right.
And on the other end, it's, you don't know enough to have an opinion. Just do what you're told. You know? And generally, that last group pays a lot more money. Right? They're paying you. They know exactly what they want, and they've hired you because you are what they want, but they don't want your thoughts. They want your skills. That's it. And as an artist, you can always say, you know what, I don't want to work on this project. I have ideas about this project, and I think that there's a much better deliverable to be had. And I'd rather not put my name on the thing you're going to make me paint. And so I'm going to pass. I appreciate the opportunity, but I can't work on this project and I can't give you the best I have to offer because I don't believe in what we're about to do. And an artist can do that. And I think, like, as an art director, I would respect that.
Yeah.
As long as it was done early and it didn't put me in a bad place as far as scheduling. Like, I can understand that. I want the best thing. And if you can't deliver that, well, okay, that's fine. That's maybe better than getting a painting that the person didn't have their heart in.
Right.
Because you can see that too.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned that you took a 2-year break, but before that, you mentioned you also worked on some Star Wars stuff. What Star Wars stuff did you work on?
It was all like licensing things. So I had done some puzzles, like paintings that were turned into puzzles. And with Jurassic Park, I did like the boxes for toys, some of the trucks. I forget what movie came. It was sometime around 96, 97, whatever Jurassic Park movie. I think it was the second movie. Came out at that time. And I'm pretty sure it was the second one. And I was doing like packaging design, that type of stuff. Nothing too exciting. I wasn't working on the movie, but it was fun. Like a lot of these things, I was getting them. Like I was getting a lot of these things. When you work on these types of projects, you usually get the materials before the movies even hit. No one's even seen the movies, and so you're getting like photo stills and reference material. Like I can't tell you over the years how many books I've read, great books that like people are waiting another year for it, and I've already read it in manuscript form. Which is a really cool thing about working when you're doing these things and you're behind the scenes. And you have, of course, non-disclosure agreements. You can't share this stuff with anybody. You can't even tell people you're working on the project.
Right.
And but it's so cool. You get something so far in advance, and it's like it's really nice. And it's really nice if you're interested in the stuff you're working on. So that was all like licensing material. Like I said, toys and puzzles and game boxes and stuff like that.
Now tell me about the 2-year break. What happened during that time, and then what reset you?
Well, I think I was just burned out. I decided I wasn't going to do illustration anymore. I responsibly finished up all the work that I couldn't let go of. I had projects that were a year out, and I reached out to the people and I was like, look, I'm not going to be able to do this project. I wanted to give you as much lead time as possible. Everything that was close that I knew that I would cause a problem if I bailed on, I did those jobs. But my heart really wasn't in it. I was done. I needed a break. And the truth is the Rolling Stones cover really was the thing that did that to me. The painting came back to us and they gave us like 36 hours to renovate the entire painting. It was brutal. It was a brutal push. And it was a last minute decision about some stuff. And it was because of the banner, that giant banner. They're going to do this 8.5 story, an 85-foot banner of the painting. The painting's only 9 inches tall. There were little errant hairs from the brush, but at 85 feet, they look like logs from trees. And so I had to go in and sand the painting down. Right. And this is just logistical stuff. Like it had to be done. They decided on this banner at the last minute. And then it's like, oh, the painting is problematic now. The painting had to be sanded down with like a 500 grit sandpaper to make it smooth as glass. And then I had to paint over every single mark exactly where it was because they had the slipcase that had been designed around the image. So I couldn't but just do
Wow.
the painting over. I had to work over the original. And we had basically 36 or 32 hours to get it done. It was a really
Wow.
hard push. And this happens. I mean, it's not like, it's not like they were being obnoxious or difficult. It just, the timing was what it was. Things had to go to print, and that banner was just a last minute decision. And so, but that really burned a hole in me.
Yeah.
I was in 8 years of doing illustration. It was the only project I was ever late on. I missed by 3 hours, but
Wow.
that 3 hours really hurt Sagmeister.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, but it was rough. It was rough. And after that, my heart wasn't in it. I wasn't painting the things I wanted to paint. Um, and when I wasn't making enough money to do the things I wanted to do. Like, it's just so, I cleared the deck and I took off 2 years. It wasn't my intention. I was going to take off a week, do no
Wow.
work. And then I woke up one day. What happened is I took off a week. And then one day I woke up, I realized I'd slept like 18 hours.
Wow.
And I go to the bathroom, I crawl back into bed, and I slept for another 12. And when I
That's
woke
when you
up,
know you're
I was
burnt out.
like,
Yeah.
that's not good. And then I'm thinking, like, it occurs to me, it's been 2 years since I painted, since 2 years since I had a job. I'd been getting up and going to the gym and working out and doing things like that. So I'd catch a movie with a friend. So I was by myself. I was living by myself. So nobody realized like what a mess I was.
Yeah.
I'd show up for things, but it's like I would show up. I slept until something happened, until I had to go out and go out, be gone for 3 hours, come home, go right back to sleep. And so I imagine I was in some state of depression. Um, but basically, when I realized I had slept almost 30 hours with a 3-minute break to go pee, I was like,
Wow.
that is not good. And so um, I got up and I went out, and I was exhausted. It was hard. I was out for like an hour and I was tired. So I decided I just started walking away from my house. I walked as far as I could until I was just falling off my feet. And I grabbed something to eat like 5 miles away. And then I turned around and walked back. And I started doing that every day as far as I could go, getting away from that bed. And I did that until like I was kind of normal again. And it didn't take very long. It was more a mental thing. Um, but yeah, I mean, it was bad. And then I started painting again after that. And I just started painting, like doing like large scale figure paintings. I'd always found it
Yeah.
interesting. I was painting them in book covers, and I just thought not something compositionally, but just figures.
Yeah.
So I did a bunch of those, and eventually I
Now,
started.
did your style? I know the topic or the subject changed. Did your style change throughout all these years, or did
Yeah,
you feel
so
it's
like
stayed
with
the
the
same?
illustration, it only got my style. My style changed a little bit, but it was because I was learning how to paint. I actually didn't know how to paint when I was an illustrator. It's kind of funny. Like I had a pretty hardy career as an illustrator, and I didn't know how to paint. Really didn't understand anything. I could get a result, which is actually not that strange. If you
Yeah.
are willing to clock the hours and just take your time and do the work, it's not that hard if you have good, clean reference to make decent paintings. Um, but I didn't understand how anything worked. And because I was getting a result, it never occurred to me that I didn't know what I was doing. It's a funny thing like that. And that's most aspiring artists land there. And what happens is what they do is they are looking for because they're like, I've got something going on here. So what I need is some more advanced skills like the pros use, and that'll make me better. And actually the truth is what they're missing are the underpinnings, the fundamentals that explain, well, why do you use a gradient? How does shadow and light work? What does color look like in the shadows and what does it look like in the light? Right? These are simple things that if you understand them, they are in every decision you make in a painting. And most people, the overwhelming majority of people who make decent art, don't even know what the fundamentals are. If you ask them, you'd get a vacant stare. They'd start rambling off things like perspective and drapes and human
Yeah.
anatomy. And it's like, well, none of those things are in abstract art. So clearly they're not fundamentals of art, right? So
Wow.
the fundamentals apply to all genres. If it's not a fundamental in abstract art and in realism, it's not a fundamental. And so
Wow.
eventually, so I started doing portrait work. People started calling me about portraits, which was funny. I I would say I would tell people, well, I'm not a portrait painter, but I'll take your job and I'll put it in the queue because after you've painted dragons and monsters and mundane portraits like you see in museums seem really boring.
Yeah.
And so like I didn't think I would be interested in it. But I would take the job because it was good money and I like painting people. And I found that I really loved the painting of it was fine, but I liked meeting people. These were people who I would never have crossed paths with them otherwise. And I got to the point where I had a fairly affluent clientele, and these are people like there's no universe outside of the fact that I was doing portraits where I would have ever crossed paths with them. And I've built some really wonderful relationships over the years with some of these people. They've been instrumental in opening my eyes to worlds that I didn't know existed. I mean, I grew up in the Bronx. I was
Yeah.
viewing the
Yeah.
world through a coffee straw. I mean, the ugly Americans? Ugly Americans are educated. I was like, I mean, I didn't even when I started making decent money and instead of moving out of the war zone, I just moved to a slightly better neighborhood in the war zone.
Yeah.
Like, because I didn't know that there was better out there. I didn't feel entitled to it. I didn't feel like it didn't occur to me. And so, like, going and working with some of these people and like getting their stories, like most of these people, they built their wealth. They worked very hard. They sacrificed things. They're not people who were born into it. I don't have one client that was born into the money that they made. And like to hear their stories and it's really, really not just that it's cool, but it's eye-opening. Like how many people, the stories are almost all the same. Like
Yeah.
they took a risk. People around them didn't believe that they were going to be successful and they just dealt with it. And like they just pushed through and it looked like things were going to fail always. Looks like things are going to collapse just before it breaks open for them. And it's like every single one of them, it was the same. No plan B. This was it. They staked everything they had on it. And so they couldn't let it fail. Didn't matter what it took, couldn't let it fail. And every one of them, that's the story, pretty much across the board.
That's
And
amazing.
it's like, it opens your eyes. It opens your eyes to I mean, you hear stories like, even like Jeff Bezos, for all he has now, he was working in his garage when he started.
Right?
Like, I mean, he took a risk. Yeah. I mean, he got some seed money from family, but they could have lost everything that they put into it. It could have been an abysmal failure, but he stuck with it. He believed in it and he pushed and he pushed and look where he is. Like if you have a millionth of his success, you're a millionaire, like, it's like,
Right. Right.
it's like, and so, maybe not a millionth, but what, 100,000th, something like that. Right. But, it's like these people, like I started to understand more about how like when you want something, like how you get there. And like I wouldn't have had my eyes opened up to these things if not for these interactions.
Yeah.
And so that's enabled me to then take what I was doing. Like I eventually I opened my own school. And from there, and there's a bit of a story there, but I opened my own school. I had, oh, actually, what you had asked me earlier, and I kind of got around it. When going back to like when I first left construction, and I decided I was going to be an artist. I went home, and I was still living at home with my parents, and um, I told my mother. She was like, "You're home early today," and I was like, "Yeah, I quit." She started crying when I told her I wanted to be an artist. She was like, "You have a good paying job. What are you doing?"
Yeah.
And I said, "I'm gonna be an artist. I decided." She cried. She stood there crying. I was like, and of course, for me, like I'm feeling bad, but I'm like, "Thank you for the support."
Yeah.
And over the year, while I was building up my skill, actually about a year and a half, I was building up these skills before I landed my first job. Literally every single person in my life, literally every person in my life, except for my older brother, came to me at some point and did me the service of telling me it's time to quit. This isn't going to happen.
Wow.
100%. My oldest brother was the only person, and they were all doing it from a place of love. Kevin,
Yeah.
you're spinning your wheels here. It's been a year. It's not gotten you anything. Yeah, the work is really nice, but you should start looking at like what's next. None of them were mean. They weren't like trying to undermine me. but they were looking out for me. I was so focused on this, and I was like, no, I'm going to make it work. No, I'm going to make it work. And actually, my mother, at about that 18-month mark, my mother came to me one day and she told me, like I had been living at home when I was working construction. I was putting money into the house, right? Because, like I said, we were very poor, so I was contributing to make it easier for my parents. And so, my mother came to me and she was like, "Look, you need to go and get a real job. You need
Wow.
to." And she was like, "If you don't get a real job and you're not contributing to the house," because I had stopped because I was running out of money from savings. She said, "You're going to have to move out." Now, this wasn't her throwing me out. It was her trying to get me to see reason.
Yeah.
Like 2 days later, I got my first job. I got a phone call
Wow.
2 days later and got my first job. It was in that week.
So what kept you going during that 18 months?
I was on a mission. I knew what I wanted to do. And I, that was it. It was that simple. I mean, obviously, I know I was like 21 years old, 20, like I didn't have kids. I didn't have responsibilities. I could be reckless.
Yeah.
Um, but like I knew what I wanted to do. And that was that. And I
Yeah.
just, it didn't occur to me that I could fail. Like I said, I was not going to be outworked. That doesn't
Yeah.
happen. I don't get outworked. And so as I believed that as long as I put in 100% effort, that I would eventually find my way to where I wanted to be. And yeah, I mean, that's basically how it broke down. And I said, like, even with all these people that I've met over the years who have staggering net worths, every one of them, they'll tell you, like, yeah, just before things opened up for me, I was thinking about stopping because things just look grim. It
Yeah.
looked grim.
Yeah.
It looked like I had just squandered, X amount of money and 4 years of my life, and I was going to have to start from scratch. I didn't even know where I was going to start. And then I got a phone call as I was putting the gun in my mouth, the phone rang, and it like
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many people I've heard that story from. And it's like I was no different. I had committed myself. I love
Yeah.
this scene. There's a Batman movie with Bane.
Mhm.
And I love this scene when they're talking about the little kid that climbs up out of this hole in the ground. It's like, how did the kid make the jump? The child did it without the rope. The rope means you can fail. It's a plan B. If you miss the jump, at least you don't die. You fall and the rope saves you from hitting the ground. You take the rope off, you have zero options but to succeed. That's
Wow.
the attitude.
Yeah.
It's
That's so
succeed
good.
or fail in a monumental fashion. And
Yeah.
I will fight to not fail. Right. And I think we're all like that. We are ingrained with the ability to do so much more than we think we're capable of when we have no choice. Like I joke around, it's like, imagine you ran a
Yeah.
marathon and you crossed 26 miles, you stumbled across the finish line. You can't breathe, your heart is pounding, your feet are aching, you have no gas in the tank. And then 100 yards off, somebody lets a grizzly bear go. Suddenly you've got gas in the tank. You can run.
Right. Right.
You will
Right.
run. You'll climb a tree. You'll figure something out because you've still got gas in the tank,
Yeah.
right? And I think that a lot of us we're not forced to dig deep very often. We have such civilized world that we live in at this point in most places. And so we don't really know what we're capable. We don't know what we've inherited, the strength that's inside of each one of us. I mean, we're so powerful and we don't even realize it because we're never tested. We're
Right.
never challenged to see what our limits are. And
Yeah.
I think that
And for you, it was also selling all your tools, right? That moment that you were like, there's no going back.
I had made the decision in that moment. Yeah. And I think
Yeah.
when you make the decision, right, it wasn't a maybe. I had decided that I was not going back. I hadn't decided on doing art, but I decided I wasn't going back to construction. And so there was no option. I closed that door. There
Yeah.
was no option there in my mind. It wasn't like, well, if it doesn't work out, I could go back. No. Um, but again, I was raised with this idea that I could do anything I wanted to. I just had to be committed to it. And
Yeah.
and I wrestled when I was in high school, and I learned the value of fighting for what you want and not surrendering. We surrender 1,000 times a minute. We don't even realize it. Every time things get tough, it's not worth the effort. It's not worth the effort. And it's little things, but
Right.
it's like, you know, think something like this. I decided that there was no fight that I wasn't going to get in the trenches with in order to get what I wanted. And again, very easy at 21 years old. I had very little in the way of responsibilities, and I could only fall so far.
Right. Right.
I was a tough kid. Like, even if I went homeless, even if my parents put me out on the street, which they wouldn't have, but the threat was made to kind of wake me up. But
Yeah.
even had that happened, I would have been okay. And so it was easy back then. Like having kids, then I would have had to have been much more thoughtful. You
Right.
don't get to be reckless when you have people that are dependent on you.
Right.
Um,
Right.
so
And I
you
think,
yeah.
go ahead.
I was going to say, so you have, if you want this and you're in your middle age, you have to be more calculating. But there's a path.
Right.
There's a path. You can
Yeah.
do it. You'll be tired a lot, but there's a path. And
Yeah.
so
Well, and circling back to something you had shared too about the people that you're working with now and doing the portraits and things like that is, and even your own story. I think that the difference between genius and average, between great creativity and average creativity, between success and failure, is wrestling with the problem just a little longer. And I think
absolutely.
that's for some people, they wrestle with a problem and they give up at a certain point. But the people that are successful, the people that excel, the people that find better creative solutions, they just wrestle a little longer with
Yeah.
that problem, and they're the ones that come up at the end with something amazing.
Yeah. I'll tell you, in the school here, one of the things I do with the students, a student will come to me and they'll tell me that a project they're working on is finished. And I don't look at the painting. I say, I don't want to see it. I want to ask you a question. If I put $1 million on the table right now, and I said to you, you can have the $1 million if you hand me the painting and the painting is done, that it's perfect. You can have the $1 million, but if it's not, you get nothing. Is the painting still done? And of course,
Wow.
every one of them goes, no. Now, that is what you just talked about. They knew it wasn't finished when they brought it to me, but it was good enough.
Yeah.
Now, I then take it one step further. They'll go back and they'll make their changes. They'll come back to me, and then I up the ante. So I just offered you, right, a carrot. How about I offer you the stick? Imagine if that painting, when you show it to me, if it's not done right, we take your left hand and cut it off. Is the painting done? And of course, the answer is nope. Why don't you go back
Mm,
and fix it now? And when they come back later on, they're not perfect, but they are much improved. Now, what I say to them at that point is, if you could have delivered this painting after being threatened, why couldn't you deliver it without the threat? Therein
mm.
lies the door to greatness. How
Yeah.
do you perform every task as if your life depends on it when you have no pressure to do so? You can figure out that. You can do anything. There is no boundary you can't get over. And like, I've built my career on that thinking. Every painting I ever did, I treated it like it was the one that was going to define my career. I do everything that way.
Yeah.
I have an art program that is 15 years old. It is in its 18th iteration because I keep finding ways to make it better, and I refuse to let it be less than it can be. I go back like my life depends on it, and it's exhausting. But I go
Yeah.
back like my life depends on it, because the truth is, my program in the hands of somebody who desperately is looking to become an artist, this is life and death for them. This is the pathway for them to be able to have the career that changes their life the way art changed mine. I would be a construction worker probably. I probably would have found myself back in construction had art not had I not succeeded in art. And I went from being dirt poor to living in one of the most affluent communities in the country. My children have every benefit I didn't.
Yeah.
And I've been able to do that for my two daughters. They have an incredible life. And I don't have to my younger daughter is taking over my school. I'm actually retiring at the end of August. from the school.
All
We
right.
still have the
Congratulations.
franchise schools, thank you, and we still have the online school. But from my brick and mortar school where I'm sitting right now, my 19-year-old daughter who's in college is stepping into, you know, the tip of the spear of an empire,
Yeah.
and she'll be running things from here. And I never have to worry about her. She'll be retired probably by 32.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And I've
So
been
tell
able,
me,
as a dad, like any dad knows, like what that is. And my older daughter, there's other things I've got set up for her, but to be able to secure their futures, to make sure there's no rock bottom for them. My daughters,
yeah.
they will be okay no matter what, forever. I sleep well at night knowing that. And art has done that for me. And so for me, what I'm building here in my program is the ability, or it's the invitation for other people to have access to that. This is the education I wish I had when I was coming up, because it would have made life so much easier. I have clawed my way here,
Yeah.
ignorant for so long, even while I built a career. And it's like, the dumber you are, the less you know about something, the harder you have to work. And
Right.
yeah. So I'm trying to kind of smooth the path for anybody who's willing to come in and do the work, that wants to build something in the arts.
So tell me a little bit more about your programs in your school. Who is it for and who is it not for?
So the program that we offer, so like the brick and mortar schools, we've got 23 of them. 21 are in the US, and we've got one in Malaysia and one in Australia, in Melbourne.
Hey,
But
my
we've,
hometown.
well, that's your hometown?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, we've got one there. And so then we've got the online school, which is Evolve Artist. And basically it's a fundamental education. So what I was saying earlier, like most people, they kind of dabble a little bit and they get some results that they're not ecstatic about them, but they're comfortable and they're happy. And so what they do is they are of the impression that because they're getting some results, that they know what they're doing. Right. And like for me, the best way to equate this, anybody who's like, there's a great thing out there, right? They're saying like the average man believes he is 4,000% better at fighting than he is. The average man who gets into, who's, gotten to fights growing up and, every once in a while has no idea what a professional fighter can do.
Yeah.
No idea. A professional fighter, if you've been in 100 street fights and you get into a fight with a professional fighter, you will hit nothing but air, and they will tag you hard every punch they throw. They
Yeah.
will tear you apart. Um, I've studied martial arts in one form or another for 30 years. I mean, I love this stuff. I wrestled when I was young. I studied jujitsu for 13 years. I boxed. I did judo. Love this stuff. And I mean, I've competed. A professional fighter would eat me alive. There'd be nothing I
Yeah.
could do to a professional fighter. And I'm pretty good. I know what I'm doing. A person who's not been trained at all, but that doesn't mean they don't think they can fight.
Yeah.
Right. And it's the same in all things. Like, but going back to art, the idea that you can make some things doesn't mean you know anything. Just
Yeah.
paying attention and taking your time will give you a decent result. And so what we look to is greater and greater, more advanced skills, a better color mixture for a skin tone or things like that. When the truth is, that's not what you need. You don't need somebody to tell you what colors to mix for skin. You need to understand how color works. What does it do?
Yeah.
How do we make it function for us? The fundamentals are very simple, like fundamental. And if you understand fundamentals, they're really empowering, because they affect every decision across the entire painting and from across your entire career as you create. And so what we do is we have boiled the program, how you train art, down to fundamentals. And as far as I can see, there are no other schools. I know most of the pros who run schools, because you're not going to find an education in a place where you don't have a working professional teaching. Because if you're not a working professional, what are you teaching? You're not teaching professional skills. You're clearly not capable of it yourself. So all the college educated artists that are not full-time working professional artists, they've got almost nothing to offer. More confusion than anything else. Then when you look at the professionals, you've got two groups. The ones who are so far removed from those core fundamentals, they can't understand why you can't just paint like them when they tell you what to do.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then the others who have made some sense of it and they're able to disseminate the information. But that last group is very small. It's almost like an Olympic skier, like, talking to you about going down the hill really fast and then turning so you don't hit things. That's how you see. Well, that doesn't help
Yeah.
me. No, no, no. Let me
Right.
show you how it's done. And you watch the Olympic skier go down, and it's like, well, it doesn't look that hard. But it's,
Right.
it's like it's so easy to forget what it's like as a pro. It's so easy to forget what it's like to be blind and not know what you're looking at and not be able to make sense of it, not be able to organize it. And so what we teach is those ground floor fundamentals or foundations that you will then build a tower of experience on top of. And I've worked very, very hard to create a program that is frictionless. Right, so one of the problems that we run into is people, they'll do some work and it'll get hard and they give up. It's the nature of most people. But what if it never got hard? What if it was just time served? And so these 18 iterations have been me shaving away the jagged corners, trying to take something that's this big and cut it in half and give it to you in two pieces, and break that down and give that to you in two more pieces. And if the pills are small enough, you don't even know you're swallowing them. And that's
Yeah.
really what I've tried to do in the program. And I can take a student from never having picked up a brush to producing museum grade work, like old master level work. We
Wow.
have we have we have 15 and 16-year-olds. They're internationally recognized for the work they do. Just incredible stuff, like
Wow.
jaw-dropping work. Like it's hard to even describe how good they are. Like 15-year-olds that produce the kind of work that 20-year veteran illustrators are producing. They're 15 years old. They've been painting for 3 years.
Amazing.
And clearly they're doing the work. All I can do is open the doors and show them. I can give them a nugget of information, but they've got to clock the time. They've
Yeah.
got it. And all that is if you really want to learn and you love art, it's just time served. And
Yeah.
if you don't like it, if you don't like art, you're not really that into it, it's going to be grueling because you don't like what you're doing. You don't want to sit in front of the easel. You're going to be sitting there thinking like, there's a movie coming on in an hour and I'd rather be there.
Right.
And so if you really are interested in being exceptional at making art, this program opens up that door. And it's
Now, is it
just
for
time served.
hobbyists or people who want to be professionals and get paid for it?
If so, for both, right? The thing is,
Yeah.
if you're going to be a hobbyist, why produce bad work,
Yeah.
right? Why? Like, I wasn't interested in being an Olympic wrestler, but I wrestled hard and I wanted to be good at it. Like everything
Yeah.
I do, I'm like that. I cook. I love cooking. I love entertaining, and so I've learned to be a good cook because I don't want to entertain and have people then leave my house and go to McDonald's on the way home because they're starving because they didn't want to
Right.
eat the garbage I was serving. And so, for anybody who, that they would love to just be exceptional at this. Why do a hobby in, a mid-level when you have access for very little effort? Because it really is very little effort. If you just do, like, this is one of the problems is people come in and they have preconceived ideas. And so they intermingle the ignorance, the stuff they figured out on their own that doesn't work, and they intermingle it with the education. The trick to this is you have to let go of all the things you think you know and let what I teach you push those things out. Everything you
Wow.
need to
Yeah.
know to be a working professional painter, I can teach. And the program that we offer teaches. But why not be a hobbyist at that level? Why not
Yeah.
produce jaw-dropping, incredible, mind-boggling artwork, even if it's just for a hobby? Like, if you want to
Yeah.
paint and like give paintings away to people, why give them mediocre paintings when you can give them like the kind of stuff that hangs in museums?
Right.
Even if you just
Well,
do
and they
it.
say that about even learning the guitar is if you self-taught on the guitar, you pick up bad habits that limit you in getting better. Like
Yes.
you'll hit a wall, you'll hit a point where you can't get better because you've developed bad habits in doing stuff. And so it sounds like what you do is deconstruct even those hobbyists and those people
Yes.
that have come to you and feel they're professional and kind of start them back off at the fundamentals that will then make them limitless, right?
Yes. And look, I mean, we have people are funny. I mean, human beings, and I'm no different, not in art, but in other things. We'll argue for our deficiencies. We will defend them. We know they're
Yeah.
there, but we will fight to maintain them. So I had a lady come into the school a couple of weeks back. She brought her kids in, and she was saying how she has taken a number of art classes and she's name dropping the schools. And I was like, okay, like, and then she asked me about her taking class and could she skip over a bunch of the beginner stuff? The beginner stuff is the fundamentals. Got to lay the groundwork, right? And I said, well, no, not really. And she said, well, but I've been painting for years. And I said to her, if you knew the fundamentals, which is what we teach, you wouldn't be looking for a class. Because if you know the fundamentals, then all you need to do is earn the experience. You don't
Yeah.
need other teachers showing you stuff. Fundamentals are fundamental, right? And she kind of pushed back against that. She was interested in taking a class, but she didn't want to have to start at the beginning. And so I explained to her, like, art is a language. It's a visual language. But imagine that you have a PhD in French, but you want to write poetry, or a PhD in Chinese. You want to write poetry in English. You have to start with the alphabet. You don't get to write poetry. You have an alphabet, boring as it may be. And so imagine that, like, somebody teaches you the alphabet and they leave out 5 letters. That language becomes very clumsy. Those 26 fundamental letters that make up the entire language, 5 of them, even random ones, you take out like X, Z, Y, you'd be surprised how clumsy the language becomes, even with the obscure letters. So what you might have been able to describe with all 26 letters in one sentence might take you 3 paragraphs to kind of circle around it, to finally get to a place where the explanation is exactly what you want it to be. you know Now imagine if somebody forgot to teach you the vowels. The entire language
Hmm.
collapses. It's still only 20% of the fundamentals. The entire language collapses. You can't make a single word. So, in art, the fundamentals are simple. There's 4. That's it. Integrating them, keeping them organized in your head is the key. And process is how you do that. And that's what we teach. We teach how the fundamentals work, and then we give a process for managing them. But it's anyway, with this lady, she finally she got irritated with me. And I'm like, I don't know why you're getting irritated with me. Like, and so, but she's explaining to me how she knows what she's doing. And I said, well, look, I'll make the point to you. Do you know what a gradient is? A gradient is just a fade between 2 things. It's a soft edge. And I asked her, can you tell me what a gradient is used for? It's used for 2 things and 2 things only. And if you use it for anything else, it starts to immediately degrade the integrity of a painting. And if you don't use it in the places it's supposed to go, it immediately degrades the integrity of the painting. She couldn't tell me that's day 1 stuff.
Wow.
I was like, you can't make paintings if you don't understand this. You're just painting what you see. That's not a skill set, right? Anyway, so she left. She actually signed her daughters up at one of the other schools where I don't teach.
Oh, wow. So you mentioned that there are 4 fundamentals. What are those 4
So
fundamentals?
there's value, how dark or light a thing is. And we start in grayscale because all fundamentals can be taught in grayscale. So we teach how dark and light, and we say dark and light, it's actually how shadow and light work. And this is built around cognitive science. Now that they're gaining such information about how the brain processes data, how the visual cortex works, like they're really making sense of this. And so what we're doing when we make a piece of art is we're crafting an illusion, giving the impression that something is 3-dimensional, that there's light and shadow moving across the subject, right? And so it's almost like the movie The Matrix. Like, there are rules to make the illusion real, and everything in that painting has to live within the rules. You have to understand what the rules are. And if you understand, you become powerful. You become able to manage them. And so we start by breaking images down into what is in the shadow and what is in the light, not how dark or light they are. And so the way that an illusion holds is, what we want to do is we want to create something where your brain, when it takes the visual information in, doesn't question it. It's so crystal clear and obvious that it's like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. And
Right.
so shadows are always darker than lights. It doesn't matter what the reference material tells you. All shadows must be darker than all lights. Now, that doesn't actually happen in the real world. If you have a black object that's not shiny, and you shine a light on it, the lit part of it's still very dark. And then if you have a light object, a white object that's very shiny, the shadows are going to be quite luminous. But if you paint it that way, the subconscious mind can't make sense of the pattern. There are some things that are dark and some things that are lights, but I'm not seeing what's shadow and what's light. So if you make a painting where all shadows, no matter what, are darker than all lights, that immediately changes how the subconscious mind is able to process that data, and in a split second recognizes what's light and what's shadow. It doesn't see it as dark and light, it sees it as light and shadow. And your brain uses shadows for certain things. Crystal clear, we know that it's used to discern certain things and make sense of the world. So we're utilizing that. The second thing is edges. There are two types of edges, sharp edges and graded edges. Sharp edges define all things as a starting point, and then gradients or fades, soft edges, are used entirely to explain three-dimensional volume in rounded objects. So people are like, I can't, my paintings are flat. Well, a gradient is what's missing, properly
Mm.
placed. They also contribute, they're not entirely responsible for, but they contribute to the impression of depth and distance, but nothing else. And if you put them in other places, when you look at the image, your brain can't see the pattern because there's randomly softened edges and things, and those don't fit with the other ones. And so the key is to make clear sense of what a gradient does and what it doesn't do, what lights and shadows look like, having a clear defining edge, right? And so, and then of course, what we do is we teach the fundamentals, values and edges. And once we have all of that down, and of course, there's architecture on the palette, how you set up a palette so you have a system in place, right? It's almost like assembly line. The power of the assembly line can't be overstated. And so we learn to paint, at least at the beginning when we're learning, through an assembly line. Once
Hmm.
those fundamentals are locked in, then you're free. Now you understand how it works. You don't need any of that structure. You can just create. But once we have the fundamentals learned in grayscale, we integrate color into it. It takes 5 hours to teach how to match color, and then students can paint in color at the same level they were painting in grayscale. From there, we then have another block where we teach how to move your stuff up to like a hyper level of precision. And then from there, we just paint. But
Wow.
it's broken down. It's not a complex thing. And we have tons of videos on this stuff. We have tons of videos on this. If you go onto YouTube and Evolve Artists YouTube page, tons of paintings of me, like where I'm doing paintings. You can see a lot of these things in action. And in fact, I think for your audience, we have something. I think it's evolveartist.com/headsmack. There'll be a thing there where they'll get access to a video where I actually show this in action. I show all the
Awesome. Well,
steps
thank
in
you.
grayscale and how it applies. It's like a 9-minute video, but it's pretty cool if you're already making art to see how an illusion is crafted. And you might find like you're doing some of those things where you didn't understand them, but that it makes sense and you can immediately apply it to what you're already doing, right? Because it's not like you have to take a class. Sometimes the experience, all that's missing is the nugget of knowledge. And if you're given that nugget of knowledge, you've got enough experience, it's like, that's the piece that was missing. Now that I see that, I can make sense of it. And you can move forward with your work.
Wow, this has been an amazing conversation. Thank you so much, Kevin. And that link again is evolveartist.com/headsmack. Thank you for sharing what you've shared. Before we wrap up, I've got two final questions that I want to
Sure.
ask you. The first one kind of relates back to your story and the fact that you didn't have any support except for, one person, your older brother. Was there a point where your mom finally said, you know what, you were right? It is going to work?
No, not really. Not really. I had I've done a lot of I didn't go to college, but I lecture in them all the time. um so this is a number of years back, but I had already, I was done with my illustration career. I was doing portrait work. I make a very good living doing portraits. Um and I had opened the school. The school had been open for my school had been open for a few years already. Financially, I was fine. I was doing very well and doing something I loved. Basically, what my parents told me to do, what they taught me to do. Um, anyway, so I used to go and lecture at the university that my older brother works at. And every few years, they kind of cycle around, and every department has the opportunity to bring in a professional from their field, give them a bachelor's degree, just give it to them. And then scholarship, it's a full scholarship, and you have 1 year to finish a master's degree in the school. And then you teach for 3 years at the school as basically as payoff. And so my brother, we were at Thanksgiving dinner, and my older brother brings this up. Hey, the guy asked, he said, if you'd be interested, he would love to have you do this with them. And I said, I really wasn't interested. I didn't feel like driving, an hour and a half to New York to go to the college a couple of nights a week. I was busy. I had a lot of things going on. My kids were still pretty young. I was my school I was still growing my school. I had a lot going on. So I said, please tell him. I said, thank you, but I'm going to have to pass. My mother had a fit. She was like, what are you thinking? You're going to have a degree. You could have a degree and you can teach in a college. And I was like, I have my own school. I have two of them, in fact. And I'm still doing portrait work. And yeah, I mean, it was like, I mean, this is only maybe 10 years ago. I was, and the funny thing about it, I finally quieted down. I mean, at the time I was making more money than all three of my brothers combined. The three of them like 21 years of advanced degrees. I was only working about 20 hours a week, and I was out earning all three of them together and doing something I love. Now, my brothers all do work that they love. We all are in fields that we enjoy. But it's like my mother said to me, like, well, what if this all goes away someday? And I'm like, I don't know what to say. Like, I don't know what to say. Like, everything can go away.
Right.
And I said, like, I have money put away. I will figure it out, but I don't expect that to happen. I'm actually quite diversified in the work that I'm doing. I'm using the same skill set, but I'm diversified. I have portrait work. I have my school. I'm looking now at franchises. I'm like online program. I've got a lot of things going on. And if one collapses, I've got the other three, right? So, but yeah, like even as early as 10 years ago, I mean, my parents my father recently passed, but my mother, she understands, like, I'm successful. I'm successful and financially I'm fine. But it took a very long time for her to get there. And, and so I don't think, she had this idea because she didn't go to college that was something I needed.
Right.
Not necessary for this. I've never had anybody ask me if where I went to school other than a curiosity. They never asked me before they write me a $40,000 check for a portrait where I went to school to see whether or not I was qualified. They look at my work.
Right.
I'm either qualified or I'm not. They want to buy the skill set that I have or not. Where I went to school is irrelevant. There are lots of college educated artists who have no painting skills whatsoever. In fact, I'd argue the overwhelming majority. And there are a good number of people who are very serious professionals that didn't go to college. And so this is one of those things, like, you can either make art or you can't. And if you can, people will pay you for it. And if you can't, it doesn't matter what your pedigree is. People won't buy garbage. They know garbage when they see it.
Yeah. Yeah. So final question. What's a head smack or a question that you wish I had asked you?
I don't know. I mean, I think you really kind of cut to the chase on all of this. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, I think what we covered was actually really good. I think the idea, like, if I were listening to this podcast, like, the thing that I would walk away with most is that idea of like that idea of like the kid bringing the painting to me and me asking if I put $1 million on the table. Like, most of us never push ourselves like as if we were threatened. What could we do? What could I as a human being do? What am I capable of if pushed that far? And how do I access that focus? I don't care what it is you're doing. It doesn't matter. Like, I think, like, for me, if I were going to walk away with one powerful piece of something, that would be it. And anybody can apply that right now to something they have going on. You hear that voice in your head. Okay, that's good. Yeah, but is it done? Is it done right?
Yeah.
Have I met my potential in this thing? Even if it's just cooking a meal. Is it good enough? Like, I think it's the Army Rangers. They have a saying, good enough is never good enough.
Yeah.
I think it's the Army Rangers, the U.S. Army Rangers. I think that's their saying. But I don't know, it's such a powerful idea. We're never threatened. We're never really challenged. And so whatever we deliver is enough.
Yeah.
And look, that could even go as far as like the relationship you have with your wife or your husband or your kids. Like, what am I doing? Am I just clocking in and kind of doing just enough? Or am I serious about this? Am I treating this with the level of care that I should, based on how important it is to me? It's a very powerful idea. And I think, again, when we start putting it in that context, like, what could I do with this thing if $1 million was on the table? And then after that, well, I know what I would do. I'd do a lot more. Now, what if my life were on the line? Well, I do even a lot more. Well, why can't I find that energy, every day in everything that I do? Because think about how how powerful you would be and how you would be perceived by the people around you delivering at that level, just as a matter of course. Wow, it's
Yeah.
like there's a guy, David Goggins. I don't know if you're familiar with him.
Oh,
He's
yeah.
an
Yeah.
insane
Oh, my
human being.
goodness.
He's the epitome of that. He's
Right.
100% everything he does. I heard this great story. I'm sure everybody who knows who David Goggins is has heard this. He went to a marathon. It's a 24-hour race. 24-hour race. It's tag team. I think it's 4 or 5 guys on a team. And they run for 24 hours. And the last person running wins. And if you cross the finish line first at the end of the 24 hours, you win, right? He showed up by himself and ran for 24 hours without taking a break. Meanwhile, all the other teams, you run 1 mile, you got 4 miles, your team is running one at a time, and then you get tagged back in. He ran the 24 hours by himself.
Yeah. Wow.
He's not superhuman. He just he's found a way to dig that deep.
Yeah.
What could any of us do to save our own children? Wow, like what we're capable of. Well, where is that energy in the day-to-day stuff that we do? Why isn't it accessible? Man, like that's like even for me, I do a lot. I am embarrassed at the level at which I produce when I think about that as an idea. I could do so much more. I'm tired.
Right.
It's not really that important. But I think like I said, I mean, I think I had a great time talking to you. I don't know that there's something that I would have said was left out. I think this conversation was really, really tight. But if there was one thing to focus on, like I think that's the coolest thing, because if you can figure that out, you can impact your life right now, this
Yeah.
moment. It's not tomorrow. It's not next week. It's just a switch in your head.
Yeah.
That's all it is. And you just got to find it. So, but yeah, I
Man,
think that's,
that was so good. I love it. That was
yeah.
such a great way to end this, and a great way to wrap it up with a very powerful head smack that I think is so applicable to, like you said, every part of our lives. Often I've said, you don't go for it'll work, you go for it'll wow. And a lot of people stop at it'll work and they don't go to it'll wow. And so, man, Kevin, this has been so good. Once again, evolveartist.com/headsmack. Be sure to check it out. Be sure to check out Kevin's work. Be sure to check out his schools, his programs. I think if you've got any kind of desire at all as an artist to create beautiful work, you definitely need to check out what he's doing, man. Kevin, thank you so much.
Paul, thank you. It's been great. I have had a really wonderful time. Thank you for having me.
Take care.
Okay, take care.
You are listening to Conversations with Misfits, Mavericks, and Trailblazers.